When talking about global or national policy, we often pay too much attention to the forest and forget that it is made of individual trees. When looking at solving problems of the forest, we do not look towards burning individual trees, just as we should not look to harm you and your neighbors to solve our national drug crisis. Let us never forget how heroin affects you and your family. The scourge of the opioid epidemic has left our communities devastated. We must not allow its grip to tighten anymore. Now, acknowledging that, we must move on to the elephant in the room. The notion that decriminalization of heroin would lead to a positive effect on the people. It is undeniable that the decriminalization of heroin will lead to an increase in opioid abuse. People are but a product of their environment. Give more people the opportunity, and more will take it. Although it may seem clear to some, let us set the record straight here. Heroin is known to cause a wide variety of problems. People become both physically and psychologically addicted. Usage of heroin leads to irreplaceable damage, such as collapsed veins, increased risk of contracting pneumonia, and even other random lung problems. All of this pales in comparison to the unfortunately now common overdose, leading oftentimes to death. Even if someone is lucky enough to overcome or avoid all these physical problems, the psychological effects are not subsidiary. I know it just as well as you do. Addiction leading to lying and betrayal of those close to them. Families distraught over a child trapped in its jaws or a young girl left without a home because of their parent overdosing. Easing the restrictions on vicious substances like heroin will only bring about ruin. If you care about those close to you, just as I do, I implore you to oppose the decriminalization of heroin.
Common knowledge on the topic of heroin is that the drug is injected in the body through a needle. What is less talked about is how the use of syringes can cause the spread of HIV, AIDS, and other health risks. According to the National Institute of Health, people who inject drugs, PWIDs, are the highest risk group for acquiring hepatitis C, HCV, infection, and continue to drive the escalating HCV epidemic. Each PWID infected with HCV is likely to infect 20 other people. To emphasize, each individual that contracts hepatitis C through the use of injecting drugs will infect another 20 other people with hepatitis C. This is frightening, to say the least. The battle against drugs was greatly influenced by President Nixon when he started the campaign, The War on Drugs, which has continued to the present date. The campaign makes those who participate in drugs go to jail and have them go through the withdrawals manageable. Talk about cold turkey. While this is extremely inhumane to the individuals, it does get the drug user off the streets. But what if we were to make heroin users not criminals? What would happen if we had drug treatment centers that offered help to those who had heroin addictions rather than locked the addicts up as criminals? What if we decriminalized heroin? Oregon did just this. Not only heroin, but all drugs were decriminalized. The Harvard economist Jeffrey Marin estimates that all government drug prohibition-related expenditures were $47.8 billion. Oregon spent about $375 million in drug prohibition in that year of 2016. Oregon plans to use the money saved to set up drug treatment centers. These centers can include clean drugs and clean, unused syringes. The dispensing of clean needles to those who use them will provide a safe way to inject the drugs and to throw them away properly for new, clean ones. This setup can prevent the spread of disease through needles.
For too long, America has had a war on drugs, costing the country and its citizens tons of money to pay for security, arresting, prosecuting, and placing incarcerated individuals in prison. While it is understandable that drugs are dangerous and should be monitored, what is currently happening in the US is far beyond that and might be doing more harm than good. Many people use drugs for their own personal use to provide relief from mental health issues. Decriminalizing heroin would allow for these people to continue to treat their mental illnesses and symptoms that come with it, contributing to public health. Not only would decriminalizing heroin lead to a rise in dispensaries to reduce HIV rates and provide surveillance to prevent drug-related crime and overdoses, But people who are just using drugs for their own personal use to treat mental health related issues can do so without being afraid of getting arrested or being incarcerated, which would make matters worse. According to the National Institute on Drug Use, multiple national population surveys have found that about half of those who experience a mental illness during their lives will also experience a substance use disorder and vice versa. It is highly possible that this is an underrepresentation, as minority groups have less access to healthcare and less access to surveys such as these. If more than half of the people using illicit drugs, including heroin, are using them for mental health reasons, taking this option away greatly decreases public health. Arresting the person and immediately cutting them off from heroin usage causes extreme issues with withdrawal, causing physical health issues and mental health issues. Decriminalizing heroin would prevent this, along with providing other beneficial systems to contribute to public health overall.